You are now streaming. Alright, let me go and check and make sure everything's working, and then we should be good to go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, yep, looks like I got you. I'm just gonna try and.
Cool. Yes, sir.
Oh, yep, looks like I got you. I'm just gonna try and.
Cool. Yes, sir.
Oh, yep, looks like I got you. All right, we are live now, and now I've got got it so that I'm not hearing looping audio every 1 minute on the live stream, which
Excellent.
which
Excellent.
would make everything much less confusing. I'm gonna go and yep. Okay, so we're ready.
All right. Kick it off, brother.
All right. Hello, everyone. This is just a kind of an unscheduled chat on the Last Jedi with my good friend Emmett Booth, aka PoorQuentyn. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us how did you start, or when did you get into Star Wars, and what did you think of the Last Jedi?
Sure. Yeah, like Jim said, my name is Emmett Booth. I go by PoorQuentyn on Tumblr and Twitter. Like a lot of people, of course, I watched the original Star Wars movies over and over and over and over and over again as a kid. I watched the prequels when they came out, so I would have been like 9, 12, and 15 or so. And I enjoyed them okay and revisited them with increasing degrees of disappointment as I grew older and developed something resembling taste. I've always loved the franchise, but I never loved Star Wars as like a world to a, as a series. Just the incredible shots, the incredible editing, the incredible music, the incredible sound. Like it was. The way they brought this world to life mattered more to me than the world itself, so I never really got into the extended universe. I never really cared that much about the backstory, so that kind of colored my perception of the franchise going forward and always made me a little skeptical about it because it was not a world I necessarily felt the need to explore more and revisit. It was just the specific talent and skill of those original movies is what drew me into the series.
Okay.
I liked The Force Awakens just fine. I thought it functioned perfectly as a product more than artwork. Like it had a very clear task of getting people back into Star Wars, reminding people what they liked about Star Wars, and I thought that it fulfilled that task. It didn't especially move me greatly. The Last Jedi, certainly I thought was a more emotionally compelling and risky movie. It was definitely going for themes and ideas that were not as guaranteed and safe as The Force Awakens. It feels like a much more singular and distinctive work, and I give it a lot of credit for that. It's also, though, a very messy work in a way that Force Awakens is not. Force Awakens was very streamlined and to the point, beat by beat. Last Jedi feels to me like it could have used another pass at both the script and the editing, just to make it move in a more kind of streamlined, relatable, reliable fashion. So I was intrigued by it. I'm very glad I watched it. There were moments in it that I absolutely adored and thought were terrific and very brave. But it felt very stop and start and very episodic to me in a way that didn't necessarily work as a complete whole. So I guess for me, the overall summation of The Last Jedi is it felt less than the sum of its parts to me. I thought there were some really intriguing parts, some really intriguing character stuff, but on the whole, it didn't. It felt in other words, it felt less. It clearly wants to be the Empire Strikes Back of this new trilogy of the new Star Wars.
Clearly,
both in terms of its placement within the trilogy and the overall themes it's going for. But it felt to me more like Return of the Jedi in terms of being like very stop and start, very a bunch of different kind of movies thrown together, and not really one whole coherent thing.
That's good.
How about you, sir?
And just before we start that, you have experience with writing and film, right?
Yeah, I have a fair amount. I write on my own. I'm on A Song of Ice and Fire. I cover Game of Thrones for Deadspin. I have a little experience in TV and film writing. Nothing extraordinary, but yeah, just enough to kind of get a sense that the script needed another pass. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, it's good to know where you're coming at the series from. So.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, and as for me, I got into the series when I was a kid, so I think I was maybe 6 when I saw the A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. I think it was about 3 months before I realized that they were actually all one coherent trilogy.
Okay.
I mean, to be fair, I was 6.
Exactly.
And I never got to watch them in one full pass through until actually no, I think I was 5 for May the 4th, sort of the old standby tradition, and I really enjoyed them. Certainly, as I grew older, I started seeing a lot of plot holes in the original trilogy, and when I just kept thinking, it's like, why didn't they just blow up the escape pod when it went out? And of course, my dad told me, well, it's because then they wouldn't have a movie.
Exactly.
And that kind of satisfied me then. Doesn't really do so anymore now that I'm old enough and that I have some writing experience. So then I watched the prequels also when they came out. I think, if I remember correctly, I saw The Phantom Menace in theaters, and I was really underwhelmed, with the exception of the actual fight scene with Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Darth Maul. Because come on, it's the first time that you got 3 Jedi fighting at once, and I'm like, 2 Jedi and a Sith, but
that lightsaber fight is incredible, and I remember going back to it. It's shot so well. There's not a lot of, like, if you compare it to a lot of action scenes in modern movies with all the quick cutting and shaky cam, there's none of that. Lucas has a very kind of refined, pull the camera back, actually let you see the choreography kind of sensibility. And yeah, most of Phantom Menace is pretty dull, but that lightsaber fight is one for the ages for sure. I agree.
Yeah, and I think that they were able to actually finally get, because yes, the practical effects in Star Wars, as beloved as they are, they don't always age well. And so I think with the modern filmmaking techniques specifically for that lightsaber fight, they were able to really get kind of the best of both worlds. The whole samurai in space, classic lightsaber feel of the original trilogy with the bells and whistles of newer filmmaking.
I agree. I mean, I think that was the overall goal with the prequel trilogy, and that's a noble goal. I wish they'd pulled it off more often than they did.
Yeah, well, the intent and execution, that's always the difference.
Exactly right. The prequels are a classic example of interesting, intriguing intent and really poor just execution and direction. The scripts for the prequels are not terrible. You can see the structure they're trying to go for, the story they're trying to tell.
Yes.
But the direction is just, both the direction in terms of the cinematography and the direction in terms of the acting that he gave, the direction he gave the actors is just that's what killed those movies.
And then I saw the new trilogy. I actually had to wait a couple of weeks, I think, for Force Awakens, but because I was working the day that all of my friends went, and then I couldn't find any friends to go with me, which was a shame. It didn't help that we all worked different shifts, but military life.
Sure, I get you.
That's how it is. And then I saw The Last Jedi, not the day it came out, but the weekend it came out. So I thought The Force Awakens was too close to A New Hope, and I understand exactly why they did it that way, because the prequels did really have a lot of bad blood in the series. They left a lot of people kind of with a bad taste in their mouths, and they wanted to, specifically J.J. Abrams wanted to say, listen, no, we're not going to just completely ruin your series the way the prequels did, or at least that was the conception, that the prequels completely ruined our series.
Sure.
And so he went with a very safe, very predictable. Essentially, I've always said The Force Awakens is basically A New Hope with all the proper nouns changed.
Yep, it's structurally speaking, it's the exact same story.
And then so they went with a new direction in The Last Jedi, because I was actually going to be really complaining. I said, if this is The Empire Strikes Back with all the proper nouns changed, then I'm essentially watching the same series, and I can watch the series at home, and not have to pay $11 for a movie ticket.
Exactly.
And so they instead went in a completely different direction. Again, I don't think the direction that they picked was necessarily the best in every single choice they made, but it was definitely a risky movie, as you said. I think that's the one safe thing that everyone can say about the movie, was that it was not going to play it safe. But I do think they fell flat in a lot of areas, specifically with me when it comes to world building. I felt that it fell short in a way that, every single time I was just thinking, wait a minute, this makes no sense. Wait a minute, this makes no sense. And I'll freely admit, I'm a nitpicker. If there are nits to pick, I will pick them. I will pick those nits.
This is true.
But
I'm generally not in and of itself. However, I agree that the world building in this movie was definitely a problem. We'll get into this at length, I'm sure, but I just don't understand what's going on in this universe and why. I don't get the power balance. I don't get how things have changed since Return of the Jedi. I don't get how things have changed since Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And
well, it's not supposed to change since The Force Awakens, because unless Rey and Luke were staring at each other for weeks and months, it's a direct continuation of the movie. So there shouldn't be any of that.
And that would be fine. I mean, if you compare it to the original trilogy, I mean, as many people have noted, the original trilogy of Star Wars is basically fantasy that is pretending to be sci-fi. It has sci-fi elements thrown on top, but if you look at the story structure and if you look at Luke's character, it's basically, Palpatine is basically a wizard. He's not really a sci-fi enemy. He's much more a fantasy enemy in terms of how he's presented, what his powers are, what his relationship to the hero is.
Yep.
And so the kind of the world-building aspects of it in the original trilogy are very much background. They're very kind of secondary, and they're very just kind of there to get the plot started. And that's perfectly fine in that context. The Empire is just the bad government, and you don't need to know much more. But the problem is with this new series, it's coming in the wake of that. So it has to address these elements, because we have to know how things have changed. And if things haven't changed at all, which is kind of what it appears to be, then the stakes start to get diminished. Because, is episode 10 just going to be the same thing again when we inevitably get to that? Is it just going to be another reset? Because then I stop caring, because the war is clearly never going to be over.
Yes, it's especially since episode 6, the entire thing was the defeat of the Empire. And
exactly.
if it was its own intellectual property, if The Force Awakens was not Star Wars at all, if it was just something else, then you wouldn't even need to worry about it. You would have had the same issue with episode 4. You don't need to know that the evil Empire is, how it came into power and when and how and all of this other stuff. It's the evil Empire. That's its purpose in the film. But because it's coming in the wake of a movie where that evil Empire was defeated, you have to say, okay, so what was left in its place? And when I'm seeing the First Order, I'm like, okay, so what are they doing? How did they get there? They should be a rump state at best, a remnant of the Galactic Empire. So how is it that they have an even bigger and scarier doomsday weapon than the actual Empire, which spent years and years and years simply in the Return of the Jedi, the second Death Star wasn't even finished. It was fully armed and an operational battle station, but a good quarter of it was still what is essentially scaffolding. When you see it in Return of the Jedi, it's scaffolding. So why would sure, maybe fully armed and operational, but you can still fly the Millennium Falcon into the core and blow it up. Oh, by the way, spoilers if you haven't seen Return of the Jedi.
if you have managed to avoid seeing Return of the Jedi, yeah, spoilers somehow. But yeah, I completely agree. Again, and it's not about It's not that every story has to have a completely logistical world-building setup, but this specifically is, like you said, is coming in the wake of what was supposed to be a pretty big deal at the end of Return of the Jedi, and it seems like nothing has changed at all. That it just hit the reset button, and that makes it hard for me to take the stakes seriously. And that's especially compounded in this movie, because this movie really wants you to take the politics seriously.
Correct.
It really wants you to care. It has the entire casino sequence with Finn and Rose, where they're talking about how, you know, there's this elite class that is supplying weapons to both sides, and, you know, just exploiting the underclass, and you have that ending with the, spoilers again, the young kid who has the Force powers too, and, like, you know, it wants to make the rebellion mean something and not just be the little guys against the big guys. It wants to have a very distinct ideological tenor to it. And in and of itself, I really admire that. I think that's great. I think that's a ballsy move to take the series in that direction. But the problem is, if you do that, then my standards go up in terms of your world building. Like, then you really need to make this make sense. You need to give me a strong impression of how this world is set up. But, like, you can't tell me to get all angry about the people supplying weapons to the First Order when I don't know what the First Order is, or where it comes from, or what its goal is, or what it's trying to accomplish. Like, you know, again, the original movie, New Hope, like, it's just, what is the Empire? The Empire is the big ship. What is the Rebellion? The Rebellion is the small ship. That's all you need. That's all the story is trying to get you to. It's not really leading you to much beyond that. Like, obviously, Lucas had his Vietnam metaphor in mind. He had his personal politics going into those movies, but it was very much the backdrop, and that's all you needed to know to enjoy the story. But this, it feels like it's caught in between, where it's trying to be a more serious movie than the world building really supports. So I was watching it and I was like, I get what you're going for. I love this concept, but I can't. Like, I just can't get up in arms about a situation that I don't fully understand.
Yeah, so you're saying that in order for you to actually care about the politics, you have to make me care about the politics.
Exactly right. You have to. I'm totally on board with taking this step and having a more, because, like, I was thinking about it compared to Star Trek, because of course comparing Star Wars to Star Trek is a tale as old as time. And, you know, one of the things I love about Star Trek is how Star Trek is deeply invested in its universe and deeply invested in the ideology of Starfleet. And, like, you know, every classic episode of Star Trek is like, here's what we believe, and now it's being challenged. How do we handle our beliefs when we encounter this new species, this new challenge, this new way of living? How do we deal with this? What do we do, guys? How are we going to deal with this? And that worked because Starfleet had a very distinct ideology, and it had its faults and blind spots, and you understood them. Like, Deep Space Nine as a show was all about investigating the blind spots of Starfleet and the Federation and how it can go wrong. And that's what fascinated me about it, is you have this clear worldview, and then it's challenged. And then, you know, for me, that was never the appeal of Star Wars. Again, the appeal of Star Wars was always, you know, the magic of movie making itself, and these great shots and these great sets and these great actors, and, like, you know,
very big love letter to film itself. Almost Tarantino-ish in a way.
I completely agree. You look back at, you know, Lucas going back to his beloved 40s serials in the same way Tarantino would later go back to his beloved pulp movies. It was very much like, this is what I love about my medium. Right. As opposed to the world itself was, like, you know, again, Star Trek has an amazing fleshed out world. Lord of the Rings. I mean, Lord of the Rings started with the world first, and then Tolkien got to the story later.
Yes, he did.
Or Westeros and the Song of Ice and Fire is a very fleshed out world. You get the backstory, you get where people are coming from, and then it takes place within that context. And you can do that with Star Wars. You can do that with any world if you want to. You just have to add the foundation. I felt like Last Jedi was putting the cart ahead of the horse, so to speak. It was trying to get you to this ideological catharsis point, which I admire in and of itself, but without doing the groundwork. And so for me, it was like it didn't quite get there. What do you think, brother?
Well, I mean, I agree with you, and especially when you see with Star Trek. Star Trek was built, you know, Gene Roddenberry wanted to build a universe where the plagues of his day, of the 60s, were gone. So that's why you could have Uhura and Kirk, sorry, mixing.
Same thing.
Roles, and yeah, that's true. Shatner is basically Kirk. You have Uhura and Kirk kiss, and that's to say, hey, racism is no longer a problem. You have Chekhov on the bridge. That's to say, hey, the Cold War is no longer a problem. All of these things were basically a utopian ideal that was what they wanted to wanted to express. And Star Wars was all about, I want to have an adventure story. I want to have a story of, these classic heroes that are, in space with what is basically wizards with laser swords. But it's not just that. Certainly you have, the World War II aerial combat scenes. That's why the space in Star Wars does not act like normal space. But to be honest, space combat, as it would actually go with physics, would be incredibly boring. So instead you get this nice pulpy World War II. The Death Star run is essentially a World War II bombing run. The space combat with when Vader deploys his TIE fighters, that's World War II dogfighting. So all of that is very clearly a love letter to what Lucas enjoyed with these World War II movies. And he says, okay, I want to do this, but I want to make it my own. I want to make it this science fantasy element, which you can do. Adaptations do that all the time. Just think of Macbeth. Kurosawa took Macbeth and transformed it into Throne of Blood and just put Macbeth into feudal Japan. And it was amazing. Oh, who was the other one? Voodoo Macbeth. It was in the 1920s. It was 1920s. Yeah, I think it was 1920s, 1930s. I can't remember exactly when. But they took that and they put it into Haiti. And you got to see this amazing, these stories, they have themes that resonate, so you can actually take off the window dressing for Star Wars and put it in whatever universe you want, and you're going to have a good tale. And that's the problem is that when the more you build on this thing, the more I require, because now I have to stay in this world, and now I want to know what happened to the First Order and the New Republic. And I was annoyed in the Last Jedi when they yada 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 the New Republic in the opening crawl.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I was saying,
again,
wait, what happened? What happened? How did they? The Republic said, okay, we're going to use the Resistance as a deniable asset to check the First Order. Okay, sketchy, but as far as geopolitics goes, that's nothing new.
True.
But then,
sadly.
But then the First Order goes and just knocks out the Republic. Not even. It's in the opening credits, and like I said, there's no time between the Force Awakens and the Last Jedi. So are we to say that they took out the New Republic in the span of 5 minutes? Because that's what it looks like it did.
Yeah, and it becomes hard to take the stakes seriously going forward, because we know that they can just hit the reset button again.
Right.
It kind of eats away at your investment in the world, because there's no. Rian Johnson, and I admire him for this. When Rian Johnson was asked on Twitter before the movie came out, like the setup stuff they did in Force Awakens with Rey and Snoke, did they tell you what they had in mind? And he admitted they had nothing in mind.
Nope.
They had nothing in mind for Rey's parents, and nothing in mind for Snoke. They just left. It was the classic J.J. Abrams puzzle box mystery thing.
Yep. And that is a weak point. That is a weak point of Abrams.
Yep. Absolutely. So I feel for Rian Johnson in terms of he was just left to just pick up those pieces.
Yeah.
And I do admire that I do like in The Last Jedi that it turns out Rey's parents are just randos, and that Snoke just is
easily one of my favorite things about that movie was
great.
And that's an unpopular decision. I understand that. That's an unpopular, decision and opinion that I have and that you have, is that I thought that was great because it's like, take that, chosen ones.
Exactly. You don't want. It becomes less interesting if it's just these two families, especially if you're going to tell a story and you really want to get invested in the rebellion as scrappy underdogs. Well, that undercuts it. It's just this one family with this one bloodline that undercuts your whole scrappy underdog narrative. And you can get away with that in the original movies because, again, the original movies are pastiches. Yes. They are winking postmodern movies, obviously, you look at the Imperial officers in the original movies, and they look like SS officers, but that is less in reference to the original Nazis than it is in reference to World War II movies. As you said, it's a visual reference more than it is an ideological reference. It's less the Empire is literally Nazis, and it's more that the Empire are bad guys, and Nazis are a perfect visual shorthand for bad guys. So that's just an easy setup, so you can understand who the Empire is without getting too much into it. But it's also like, you know, Leia being a princess, that doesn't really, you know, if you really think about that for long, that doesn't make much sense in the sci-fi universe. You don't really understand why it is in the original movies, but it's because princess is something you can grasp immediately. Yeah. It's an instantly understandable story architecture device, and then Lucas used it for that reason. But
once you get to from the tower.
Movie, Exactly. It's a perfect storytelling device, but once you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of the world building, then you actually have to back that stuff up.
Yeah.
And I feel like and again, I think that's in part because Rian Johnson was picking up pieces that really didn't have any connecting threads, that Abrams and the other people working on Force Awakens didn't have anything they were really building towards, so he had to make it up.
Yep. And
like I said,
they weren't going to like what he did, yeah.
I admire him making Rey's parents just random people and kind of denying. It's the thing. Like, I like the aspects of Last Jedi that are like telling fans their theories are silly. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, no, Rey's parents are random people. None of your theories are right. Snoke is just a random person. None of your theories are right. Like, there's a ballsiness to that. There's a quality to that I really admire. But you know, then it's trying to be a deconstruction and still give you the feelings at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
And that it's hard to pull off both those things at once.
Yeah. And I think I know that the anybody can be a hero theme is very strong in the movie because that's in the initial shot. In the initial shot, the gunner, Paige, I think her name is Paige. You don't even learn her name in that scene. You don't learn it until you meet Rose halfway through the movie. And it's, you know, who is she? No, that's the point. It doesn't matter. It could be any old person in a you know, flight suit and helmet trying to go and drop those bombs. It literally does not matter. It's just that she gave it her all and gave the ultimate sacrifice to do what her mission, and that was, you know, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter that Rey's parents are not, you know, she's not part of the mythical Skywalker or Kenobi or whatever other. They had a lot of other theories.
Oh yeah, I've heard. Yeah, there's enough theories that have her descended from pretty much any given character in this universe at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, she doesn't need to have that heritage. Yeah. Like, you know,
what matters is what Anakin she does.
Didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Anakin was, if I remember correctly, Anakin was immaculately concepted from the Force or something like that.
It was from what I get, it's this really weird, creepy storytelling element they don't talk about much. But yeah, like it's implied that like Sidious's master, Darth Plagueis, like impregnated Shmi via the Force somehow, and like they don't go into that much. But yeah, it's an weird immaculate conception thing.
Which, I mean, it certainly explains Anakin's power, because, I mean, I have to say, Anakin probably, at least in the main movies, I don't know anything about. The only extended universe stuff I know is Knights of the Old Republic 1 and Knights of the Old Republic 2, which, Knights of the Old Republic 2, phenomenal video game, everybody should play it.
Absolutely.
Especially, and just listen to Darth Kreia talk about everything that Chris Avellone had a problem with when it came to the Force. You get a lot of that with Obsidian games, but I love Obsidian, and I doubt Chris Avellone or Josh Scheuer is watching this, but if you do, I love you guys.
Amen.
But
yeah, that was Anakin's backstory, and the prequels. Like, one thing I did like about the prequels is it did take the world building seriously. It didn't always execute it well.
Yeah.
But it was like it wanted to let you know that, like, you know, the Republic and the Jedi, they screwed up.
Yes.
And that's something that this movie kind of follows up on, is that these institutions were extremely flawed and riddled with blind spots and elitism and arrogance and impotence.
Yep.
And they kind of deserve to lose. They deserve to lose to Palpatine. He hacked them very easily, and they fell apart, and they screwed the pooch. And that's my favorite aspect of the prequels. And that, for me, there's a world building foundation there that isn't really there with the new movies.
Yeah.
That, you know, I understand what the Republic is and why it went down in the prequels. Like, you know, you go back to the Phantom Menace, and it's like you have the trade blockade that's the inciting incident for that movie, and then like they go back to the Republic, and the Republic doesn't do anything about it. They're impotent and fighting amongst themselves and not taking anything seriously. And it's like, oh, okay, I get it. This is why they lost. This is why the Empire was able to beat them. So it doesn't come out of nowhere that Palpatine is able to take control. I understand why Palpatine is taking control.
And you see that
and
also...
in this one, it's just...
Go ahead.
Oh, well, it's like, you know, if you're going to have the First Order blow up planets, I need to understand how they still have the resources to do that. If you're going to have the First Order suddenly... If you're going to have the First Order chasing the Resistance down, and, like, they mention in Last Jedi, it's like, oh, we have allies in the Outer Rim. Wait, who? Why are they there? Why are they not here? What about everyone else? What's going on? I want to know what's happening. Tell me what the situation is so I can get invested in your particular execution of the situation. In the original series, it makes complete sense that at the start of Empire, even after losing the Death Star, that the Empire has quote-unquote struck back. Why? Because they're the government. They have the resources of a galaxy to call upon. The rebellion is this scrappy outfit going from planet to planet. So I understand. But in this situation, when you, like as you said in the opening title crawl, suddenly the First Order is basically the Empire again. I want to know why that happened. Not only because I would like to know for my own satisfaction, but also because I need to know why that happened, or I can't get invested in the Resistance fighting back. Right.
And it's funny you were talking about the flaws of the Jedi, because you definitely also saw that with the villains of the prequel trilogy. With the exception of Maul and Sidious, well, no, not Sidious, but Darth Tyrannus. Why did Dooku fall? Dooku fell because he was frustrated at the inaction and the exploitation of the Republic. He couldn't handle just the Zen Jedi just deny everything, because it struck an emotional chord with him, and he couldn't control those emotions. And that's one of the chief failings of the Jedi. The Jedi are self-annihilating, and I mean that in the self-depreciating sense, with the exception of the second tenet of the Jedi Code, which is there is no ignorance, there's only knowledge. Every single tenet of the Jedi is self-annihilating. There is no emotion, or there is no passion. There is serenity. Don't feel your emotions. You know, even there is no chaos. There is harmony. That's saying that you're not. That's not saying, hey, go and make things harmonious. That's saying there is harmony, and you're not going to do anything about it. It's impotent in a way, just like you said. It's impotent in a way the Republic was, and it's okay. So now you can't. You're just going to let evil take over because they're so mired in this, they can't do anything about it. And that's the very real shortcomings of, you know, Anakin. Why did Anakin fall? Anakin fell because he couldn't accept losing the woman he loved. And the Jedi's solution was, oh, well, there is no death. There is the Force. And it's like, okay, but I still lose Padme. And it's okay. So now he can't handle that emotion, and so there's a really real sense of, hey, the Jedi aren't perfect. I mean, in the original series, all the Jedi were these Zen laser sword guys, and that's all they needed to be. But then you see, you know, Luke doesn't do anything with the light side, and when he finally succumbs to his anger, he nearly takes down Vader. He's probably capable of taking down Palpatine. Palpatine even says, "Strike me down." And he refuses to do so, and that's his heroic movement. But it's like, okay, so he did more when he succumbed to his anger, but then he controlled himself and then redeemed Darth Vader, and then that's the great success of the light side of the Force. But you know, the dark side of the Force is, just as Yoda says, it's quicker, it's easier, it's more seductive, because it feeds into the very real notions of pride and agency, and I mean, these are not bad things. I mean, if there's an injustice, people want to stop it, and then it becomes, how much time do you keep saying, oh, well, I'm going to stop this injustice, to I'm never going to let people have the capabilities of doing this. And that's where a lot of these, I was actually really hoping for a dark side villain at one point who is basically saying, I know what's best for you, and I can't believe you objects have such an idea that you're going to think something different. That, I think, would be an amazing way to kind of have the dark side of the Force, because it's the same disregard for intelligent life that you see out of the worst cackling maniacal supervillains, but it's a different way, and it's about someone not keeping control of themselves, and that's a lot of the dark side too.
I agree completely. I mean, that's something I find interesting about the dark side, and I think they kind of dropped the ball with this in terms of Snoke. Like, I'm totally cool with Snoke not having a specific backstory, or like he's secretly Mace Windu or any kind of that nonsense. I'm totally fine with that not being the case, because like the Emperor in the original trilogies, he wasn't given a backstory until we got to the prequels.
Yep.
That's totally fine. My issue is, like, I wish, you know, like you said, the dark side is not, what defines the dark side is not mustache twirling villainy, it's anger. That's
Yes.
what the dark side is. It's anger and a desire to fix things quickly, like you say, and an insistence that we have this power and we can fix the world's problems with it.
Yep.
And of course, that, as you say, that jumps immediately to stopping anyone who would get in your way.
Yep.
And that's why the dark side is so dangerous. But I mean, you know, there's much more to it than you know, purely wanting power or control. And I think they do explore that with Kylo Ren. I think they do explore that with Luke in The Last Jedi. But yeah, Snoke not so much. And yeah, the light side's weakness is, what's interesting about the Jedi is they're terrible rebels. Like,
Yes.
they're the worst group you could have to change a situation, because, like you said, they're Zen to a fault. They believe the harmony already exists, and you just kind of have to support it. Mm-hmm. So you have Yoda and Obi-Wan, as many people have noted, are really kind of terrible mentors to Luke, and really kind of don't tell him what he needs to know when he needs to know it, and let him walk into Cloud City kind of blind, and he eventually has to redeem them and do better than them, which is one of my favorite aspects of the original trilogy, that he has to kind of succeed where they have failed. And I think that's great, and that does come up again, The Last Jedi with Luke and Rey, in terms of Luke kind of giving into his kind of anguish and despair over what happened with his nephew. But it's again, you have those great individual character moments, but it's against the backdrop of something I don't like. I think I like the Jedi stuff in The Last Jedi makes sense to me. The Force stuff in The Last Jedi I think is interesting, but it's the Empire versus the Resistance stuff that doesn't really work for me.
All right, so let's go break down each of the three major character arcs. I'd say that's probably a good thing. We'll say what we liked and what we didn't,
go for it.
And maybe what we would have changed if we would have changed anything. So, which one do you want to start with?
Up to you, buddy.
All right. Well, I think we'll start with let's start with the one that is largely considered the weakest, and that is the Finn and Rose arc.
Sure.
All right. So they go to they have this plan to go and recruit this hacker at a casino planet, which they go to the casino planet and they're immediately arrested, and then just so coincidentally they happen to find a different hacker. That struck me as a little too ham-fisted.
That was clumsy storytelling. I thought it was like, oh, and then this happens. It wasn't like good storytelling is this and then this, but then this, but then this happens, and that felt very like just like things happen, it just felt random to me.
Like the guy, and I thought they were actually going to say that Benicio del Toro's character was the hacker, and he got into a gambling debt or something, and then that red little rose or carnation or whatever it was that was on his lapel, he had to pawn that off for his gambling debts. That's great. That's what I thought would have happened. I actually really liked Benicio del Toro's character. In this, I really thought they could have done some interesting things with his character when he specifically goes and says, oh yeah, they did sell weapons to the First Order, and they also sold weapons to the Resistance. And it's like, ooh, things maybe aren't as clear-cut as you think. You know, maybe you should think about maybe that things are complicated, which, I mean, that is, in the original trilogy, was a straight-up good and evil story, and there's nothing wrong with a straight-up good and evil story, but more nuance is better, I think. And I really was hoping that they could have explored that, but then they just kind of lost it at the end. They just said, okay, no, he's just the hacker. And don't get me wrong, Benicio del Toro, he acted his heart out. One of the better... I mean, don't get me wrong, I think the actual acting, for the most part, was pretty good. The writing, not always so much, but the acting was pretty good. But even among a lot of the good actors, Benicio del Toro really sold his character. Just like when he said, hey, I want to be actually paid. Hey, I want that necklace right there. And then you have Rose, Finn says, no, you can't do that. That's special to her. And she goes, it's not special if we complete our mission. And so he hands it over. And then he just goes, choop, and then tosses it back. And he goes, his entire thing is, let's subvert your expectations as to what it is I'm actually doing. And then, of course, he backpedals and betrays the resistance to save his own hide, which again I was okay with. I thought that was kind of, he was certainly going to be a much more sketchy Han Lando type.
Exactly, which I appreciate. I mean, I like one of the fun things about Star Wars is the sleazy characters. You get characters who are just kind of not even monstrous, but just kind of apathetic and selfish. And like he says, he tells Finn to just don't join these institutions. They're just going to let you down.
Yep.
Which again, as a theme, I think that's great. Are not so different. But again, you come back to the problem was I don't know what these sides actually are. So if you do want me to take this seriously, and I admire that move, then you really have to get me caught up. Okay, so they're selling weapons to both the First Order and the Resistance. Okay, so then what are these organizations even? What even is the First Order? Is it just a handful of Star Destroyers that was left around after the Empire?
Well, clearly not, because they were able to take out the New Republic.
Apparently not. How'd they get the they're even more advanced version of the Death Star. And of course part of that is the classic problem where it's just the technology of movie making has advanced so much that our version of sci-fi is just always going to look bigger and scarier than the version of sci-fi in the 70s. That's just kind of just inherently a thing you got to just deal with.
Okay.
But it creates story problems where I don't get what the threat is exactly. I don't fully understand the nature of I've been trying to find my way of saying what this problem is throughout this conversation. I guess I would sum it up by saying I don't get how this war would end.
Yeah.
I don't get what it would take to win. And in the original series, I know what it is. You kill the Emperor, you turn back Darth Vader, you blow up the second Death Star. It's over.
Yep.
I get it. But in here, I don't understand what the end game is supposed to be exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's, and I like the world building in the, both these sides are buying weapons, both these sides have corruptions. I like that aspects of it, but the momentum and the urgency is kind of sapped away when I'm not sure what the stakes are, what the structure is, what's going to happen next. It just becomes like a series of things that happen, and some of them are really interesting. Mm-hmm. But like you say, I like Benicio's character. He's always a great actor. I like his role there, but I don't know what it's pointing to exactly. But anyway, so keep going on Finn and Rose there.
Yeah. So and then I didn't really get from the whole side arc. Didn't really it didn't really pop to me. It's like, ooh, these rich exploitive 1%ers, booga booga booga, and it's like, okay. Why do I actually need to not care about these people? And don't give me this ham-fisted, they race horses or llama horses, whatever those things are, like sloth llama horses,
random monsters. I mean, that's fine if you want me to hate them, but instead, again, I come back to, isn't Leia a princess?
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't this rebellion being run by one family that has magical blood? If you're gonna do that, then you need to address stuff like that, because otherwise you have a completely muddled script.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, you're telling me why I should dislike these guys, but are they even going to show up after this arc? It's like, okay, the animals tore up the casino. They didn't save the slave children, which I would have thought would have been maybe more of a priority. I would think, but hey. I don't make these decisions.
Right. There's the moment when Rose lets one animal go and says, I don't know what she says exactly,
now it's
but
worth
it's
it.
That's what we came here to do.
And I was
wait, really?
No, you came here to get at hackers so that the rest of the people don't blow up. That's what you came here to do.
Yeah, it felt kind of an unearned. It felt just unearned. It's it's not that I don't like what you're going for, guys, but I don't really feel like you've laid the foundation for me to achieve the catharsis you're going for.
Yeah. So, I mean, would you have any other suggestions for how that arc could have been improved?
All right. Well, I've already taken heat for bringing this up with individuals who've seen the movie, so I'm sure this is going to be an unpopular opinion.
Okay.
But I think Finn's attempt at self-sacrifice at the end of that storyline, when they're on the salt planet,
yeah,
and he's driving the thing, his little ship into the laser
cannon. The not snowspeeder from Hoth.
Exactly, that's Peter. I feel like maybe he should have died. Like,
me too.
Not that I don't like Finn.
Me too.
Or I love John Boyega. Great performance, great character.
Oh, yeah.
Not that I want him out there. But for the same reason that, like, Harrison Ford wanted Han to die in Jedi,
yeah,
it just feels a little cheap that he's like Rose saves him and says, like, no, like, you know, this isn't about
destroying what we hate.
It's about saving what we love. And I'm like, excuse me, didn't Laura Dern just sacrifice herself by flying her ship?
Didn't your sister sacrifice herself?
Wasn't that awesome?
Yeah. Like,
I thought that was supposed to be great.
Yeah.
And, like, saying, like, no, we're going to save our friends, while right behind them the laser cannon is busting through the door that's going to kill all their friends. And I'm like, it's not, you know.
Yeah.
Obviously, no, great that you guys love each other and great that you want to save him, but, like, thematically, I don't really get the point you're going for here.
Yeah. No,
like,
I thought it was a great arc for him, because Finn in The Force Awakens is cowardly. And he leaves the First Order specifically because he loses a friend. And in the beginning of The Last Jedi, his primary concern is Rey. So you could see that he's looking at things from a very personal standpoint. You know, this is my friend, this is my friend, this is my friend. This is when he finally says, I've found an institution that I'm happy to serve. And it's just a complete 180 from where he was in the First Order. I really liked that, and I thought, okay, he's going to go and say, you know what, this is. I'm actually going to become a soldier. That's what he wanted, was to become or that's what he was. He was a soldier, but he was a soldier for the wrong cause. He didn't believe in his cause anymore. And then he finally found a cause that was wonderful. That was what he wanted. And
absolutely,
then they took it away. And okay, I was thinking, okay, so maybe Rose is going to do it instead. Be with her sister or something like that. Or you know, now that Finn has found his the cause he wants to serve for, now he's going to serve it in Episode 9. I'm thinking, okay, that's a little, you know, a little heavy-handed for Episode 9. Very clearly an out of character. Hey, we're going to keep John Boyega for the next movie type thing. But okay, I'll work with it. But no. Then she knocks him out of the side, or out of the way. And then says, you know, this is about saving who we love. And then she falls unconscious. And now I'm thinking, wait a minute, aren't they just exposed in the middle of a salt field? How the hell is he going to run all the way back to the base carrying a medevac sled behind him? How are they not going to blow him out of the just into nothingness? And it's,
how did she know she wasn't going to kill him when she rammed his ship with hers? Like, again, like I get the emotion of what they're going for there, but like her argument was like, she was acting like, Finn, how dare you do this? How dare you sacrifice yourself for your friends? That's a bad thing to do. Like, didn't your sister do this?
Yeah,
wasn't that a heroic thing? Like, I know you miss her. I know you want her back. But wasn't that a good thing that she did that? Wasn't that... Yeah. Isn't that... Like I totally agree with you. Finn finding his ideology was one of the best parts of the movie. When, like, Phasma calls him scum and he says rebel scum. And I was like, yeah, you did it. You found something. You believe in a thing. That's great. But then then that felt like a weird kind of reversal that existed for no other reason than to keep that character alive and keep that actor in the franchise. And it felt deflating to me in a way that, like, again, they were going for something and then they didn't quite earn it, or they got cold feet. And that's a lot of the movie to me, is like, just they're on the verge of something really interesting, but they don't quite get there.
Yeah, no, and especially like I said with the arms dealing casino dudes, or the let it all burn type ideas. Those are, it's like you're gonna do something really cool, and then they backed out and went somewhere else. And I was like, no, you had such potential to be a completely different Star Wars. I mean, and even Rogue One, they did the whole thing to say, hey, sure, the rebels are not the guys that blow up planets, but they do sketchy stuff. Like, they straight up, they cold cock and execute guys in Rogue One. And I thought that was great, because it's like, don't sugarcoat what a war is. That's one of the big things I hate when people do. I mean, obviously you've read a lot of the stuff that I've written. I hate it when
I know it well, brother,
when people say, oh yeah, no, this war is going to be so glorious. It's going to be the Teddy Roosevelt splendid little war. And it's like, okay, the splendid little war was a lot of people dying of yellow fever. Maybe we should talk about that. I mean, and that's the nicest thing you can say about the Spanish-American War, unless you want to talk about
Absolutely.
the spirit of reconciliation between North and South, because they had a old Confederate general leading. But that's neither here nor there. That'll be a. If you're actually interested in that, I do recommend Dan Carlin's Hardcore History podcast, The American Peril, episode 49, I think. That's a really good episode if you guys want to learn more about the Spanish-American War. That's not really the topic of this discussion.
No, but totally. Hardcore History is great. I definitely recommend. But I agree. I like that about Rogue One, too. My favorite moment in Rogue One is early on when Cassian, I think is his name, the main male character, shoots one of his own guys because he can't get him out. Yep. And if he gets captured, he's going to spill the beans. And I was like, oh, that's great. I'm sure that happens all the time in the rebellion, but it was never shown to us before. And that's really fantastic. But like, again, you need to. And that works in Rogue One for me because the backdrop for that is the original series setup, with the Empire as just the government and the rebellion is just a scrappy group of rebels. So I understand what's going on.
Yep.
But this one they had to move on to the next step of what the structure is, and I could see them going for it with the casino stuff, but they never. For me, they didn't really stick the landing in terms of what was going on and why. So it more just was like. Yeah, the stuff about them selling weapons to both sides and this kind of elite Krupp class, it just felt kind of there. It was just commented on the side. It didn't really feel like the big catharsis that they were aiming for, at least for me.
Yeah, that's why I say it was like booga booga booga. It's like, okay, it's there. It's just it's a prop for a haunted house. It's like, okay, that doesn't really scare me. Now let's talk about an arc where I think a lot of people say they did stick the landing, which was the Rey arc.
Sure.
The Rey arc, I think, was probably the strongest of the arcs. At least from my perspective. I think they explored a lot of interesting things. I mean, I could have done without the whole drinking the fresh milk scene, but I kind of took it to be just Luke trolling Rey. I mean, because he was
exactly.
It's like the spear thing. It's like, oh, is he going to do this crazy force training? No, he's getting food. I know that it's like that is really kind of impractical and it falls apart when you think about it for a little bit. But he's trolling Rey. Okay, that's fine. I mean, I thought the whole Reed thing when he was trolling her with the meditation exercise, I thought that was hilarious.
Oh yeah, that was great. That was for me. Like, that's how you question the ideals. That's how you deconstruct your universe well. I love the moment when he asked her, what is the Force? And she was like, it lets you move rocks and control people. And I was like, of course, that's all she knows about this. Why would she think it binds us and holds the universe together and we are luminous beings? Why? She doesn't know any of those things. Why would she know any of that stuff? Like, this is completely virgin territory for her. And I like that Luke was not interested in being a mentor, and that I do like the overall running thread that Luke has realized the Jedi are more trouble than they're worth. That, like we've been saying, they're not actually that helpful, they're not actually that useful as an institution, and that the Jedi did produce Anakin and they did produce Kylo Ren. They produced these two school shooters who have caused immense damage. And it's very clear in both cases that Anakin and Kylo Ren are not accidents, that they got where they were because of how the Jedi function and because of how they operate. That's where we got them. And I like that Luke,
failures of the code.
Like, you get the sense from Yoda and Obi-Wan. Exactly. You get the sense from Yoda and Obi-Wan that they haven't really... Yoda and Obi-Wan never seemed to think about why Anakin went down and what their own role in that was. They never seemed to have... I mean, maybe Yoda a little bit, but they didn't really seem to have the self-critique going on. I like that Luke has that. He's like, oh, this is my fault. Yeah. And so I don't want to try... He has that line like, I wasn't scared of this power last time I saw it, and I'm scared of it now. Yeah. And I think that's great, and I love that Rey was trying to... you know, and yeah, Rey was going into that storyline not like, oh, I'm the next Jedi, I got to learn all my things. She was just like, I don't know what this is, I don't know why I can do these things, I don't know where I'm from, I need help. And she says that a couple times. I need assistance. And you know, if you can't give it to me, then I need to go elsewhere and find, like, she goes off and finds Kylo Ren because at least he's talking to her. Yep. At least he has some interest in working through these issues. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a terrific way to push that storyline. You have this fear of what the Jedi are, and a hope that you can do better, and this worry that you can't. And yeah, I agree. I thought the whole Rey, Luke, Kylo Ren nexus, I thought that was the heart of the movie, and I thought that worked best.
I didn't like the idea that Luke ignited his lightsaber and was actually thinking of killing Kylo Ren, because this is a guy who tried to redeem number 2 evil man in the world. Or galaxy, I guess, really. I didn't like that. I thought that it was kind of, you know, it lost the sense of Luke's character. What I would have actually really liked, and again, this is something that they were touching on, and building up, and then they went away from it. I would have liked to have seen Kylo Ren's training and showing that he doesn't have control of his emotions. And Luke doesn't see it because he's Luke Skywalker. He's not going to build the next Vader. It's that pride that because he even discusses, you know, I'm Luke. I'm Luke Skywalker. And it's like, okay, but now you have, you know, and then you could have that pride leading him to his blind spots because he's going to say, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm not going to unleash the next horrible monster onto the unsuspecting galaxy. I thought that would have done a lot better. And then maybe we could have seen Snoke actually, you know, taking Luke's shortcomings and corrupting Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren, who I have no idea who they are because they are never discussed.
Exactly.
And so I think that would have been a better start of darkness for Kylo. He was not getting what he wanted. Luke was too blind to see it because he was proud of himself and hidebound in the failure, or in the Jedi ways, which include the Jedi failings. And Snoke saw it and took advantage. Because like I said, with Tyrannus, with Anakin, all of these guys they lose control of their emotions, and then they get corrupted by the dark side. And the dark side is there. Sidious is there waiting to take advantage of these people when the Jedi Code falls short. And I thought that's what they were going to do with Snoke. Snoke was going to find, you know, what was it from Kylo? Was it the fact that he had a great lineage that he couldn't live up to? I mean, that's certainly, that feeling of inadequacy is going to lead to a craving of power. Okay, there's the dark side. You know, is he frustrated because the ideas are too passive, that he's you know, too type A or something like that, which, I mean, I don't really think Kylo Ren is really type A, but, you know, whatever. We'll you know, all of these inadequacies could have led to the dark side and could have been a real discussion of the failings of the Jedi Code. Going back to KOTOR 2, Kreia spends the entire game telling you about how much the Force is a failure. And I thought that would have been amazing. Maybe they should have brought Chris Avellone on for as a writing consultant. Maybe I should.
I'm on board.
I'll make that suggestion to Kathleen Kennedy. You know, with what non-existent line to Lucasfilm that I have.
Agreed. I was personally fine with Luke's call in that regard because he's still, as much as he, you know, obviously saw the good in Vader and redeemed him, he did have that moment when he freaked out on Vader and cut his hand off and was wailing on him with the lightsaber and was ready to kill him. So that part of him is in there. But I think what would have made it work is, I agree, if they'd fleshed out the specifics of Kylo Ren's corruption and why he turned. Because, like, it would have helped, first of all, I think, if we'd actually seen what it is Luke saw in him that made him so scared.
Yes.
Like, if we'd actually gotten a vision of Kylo horribly killing Han and Leia, because Luke loves Han and Leia, and that would horrify him enough to make a rash decision.
And that's what motivated him for Vader.
Exactly. And it would have helped, if we gotten specifics on Snoke's corruption of Kylo Ren and what drew those two together. Again, I don't need Snoke to have a specific backstory. No. I don't need his origin, but I do need the origin of his relationship with Kylo Ren. I think that was something missing from the movie. I need to know, because I get why Kylo Ren has stayed a Sith. Mm-hmm. I get his insecurity and his desire for power and his ego. I'm not sure why he became one in the first place. That's what I'm missing his corruption. I get why he's not turning back. Like, but maybe my favorite moment in this movie, in Last Jedi, was after after he kills Snoke and after he joins forces with Rey and they kill all the guards. And Rey's like, "Yay, I did it! I turned you back." And he's like, "Oh no, that was a coup.
Yeah.
I'm not a good guy. I'm just taking
burn it all
charge
down."
That was great. I thought it was like, oh, that's what a great subversion. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So I get why he's staying a Sith. I get why Rey was unable to pull him back, but I feel like there is a story gap in terms of his corruption. I don't understand who Ben Solo was before he became Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
Whereas you do get a sense of Darth Vader's corruption and what drew him down that path. So yeah, I think that's something that's missing.
And I like that scene as well, because it's like if he turns good, then he's only ever going to be, an equal to Rey, a partner in the defeat of the First Order. Whereas he can take over, and now it's him, and that really plays on that insecurity that you can kind of see with Adam Driver's facial expressions, with the dialogue that he has with Snoke about, oh, a little girl beat you, who knows nothing of the Force, and she just whomped you in the end of The Force Awakens. And that insecurity is excellent, and I think it made him. And it's the same with in the end when he says, "Everyone shoot Luke Skywalker." Literally, everyone shoot Luke Skywalker. And then Hux goes over to him and says, "Do you think you got him?" And it's like, okay, yeah, that's how you express Kylo Ren's insecurity on the screen. And so I thought that was really well done. And then you had your other writing holes, like how does Rey get from Snoke's apparently personal escape craft into the Millennium Falcon? How does that work? It's like,
true.
Come on, you could have had Rey not show up at all. It could have been Chewie having having a big scene, and I think that would have been better than Rey shows up at the end. I think that would have made that at least a little bit more logically coherent. Plus, let's be honest, if you have Chewie, you need to use Chewie, because he's Chewie.
100%. I agree. He's beloved for a reason.
Yeah.
Like as everyone pointed out, like at the end of Force Awakens, after Han died, the fact that Leia hugged Rey instead of Chewie was just such a betrayal. That's like, it's so frustrating. I know, like that would have been so sweet if she just little Carrie Fisher in that big old hugging that big old dog suit. That would have been adorable.
Especially since he didn't get a medal at the end of A New Hope.
Exactly, he was just barking about it. He's just been resenting that the whole time.
We rectify the injustice from the original trilogy.
Poor Chewie never gets credit, never gets love. But yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Like Kylo, one of the reasons he doesn't turn back to the light is because it would just make him an equal and a partner to Rey and nothing more. And there was that great moment in his first conversation with Snoke when Snoke just looks at his helmet and says, "Take that ridiculous thing off."
Yep.
And which I love, because I love that Kylo Ren's helmet is just him trying to be a badass. Like it's not, he's not covering a scar, he's not covering a deformity
or a breathing apparatus or whatever. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's just because he thinks Darth Vader looked cool. Yeah. And so he wants to look cool.
Didn't you say Kylo Ren was a Darth Vader cosplayer?
Exactly, and that's what I love about his character. I think that's fascinating. Again, it's what I like about these new movies is they're presenting the younger generation as people trying to live up to that older generation, and people who have, like us, lived in the world of Star Wars, lived with these characters for years, and are trying to negotiate a relationship to them.
I think that's why the millennials, especially the millennial fans, are really, really gravitating towards Rey, Finn, and Poe. Because it's like,
which I get. I think that's a smart storytelling move. Yeah, that's the way you should. Oh, almost lost you there. Good.
Oh, yep, I just had a lag spike, it looks like. Oh, come on. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Lost you for a second.
Lost you, brother. Are we back?
Yep, I think we're back.
Cool. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so
Anyway,
where were we?
Oh, we were talking about Kylo's kind of coup and his relationship with Rey. Yeah, I thought that was interesting stuff. Even though, as again, it does get sloppy in terms of specific like scene to scene construction in terms of where each character is. I agree. That kind of start to fall apart.
Yeah, and then the lightsaber with the not Snoke's Praetorian Guard or whatever they were. I thought that I thought that was really nicely done. Really nice fight choreography.
Oh yeah.
I still think the Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Darth Maul fight from Episode 1 is still probably my favorite lightsaber battle. But
I would agree.
But it was they knew what they were doing. They the choreography, the effects, the pacing. I thought that was all really well done.
Yeah, that was a great scene. I love just like that big kind of red backdrop they have in that set was really cool.
Oh yeah, no, the lighting really set the mood for that scene.
Absolutely. A lot of great mood, a lot of great ambience and kind of visual stuff going on in this movie. That's a lot of good stuff.
It's easily the prettiest Star Wars ever, and I would say it was a feast for the eyes and the ears. The scoring on this was really well done as well.
Agreed.
The hyperspace jump, that is up there with the best scene, the best shot of Star Wars, and I'm saying overall that the fact that that's even in the running should tell you how beautiful that scene is.
I remember I was just like in the theater and I was just I pressed myself back into the seat. I was just stunned and astonished by how good that looked and how distinct that looked. Oh, yeah, I thought that was an incredible moment.
The particle effects on that too were very beautiful. Yeah. But now, okay, that leads us actually really good into the Poe's arc, which I'll admit that this is the arc that I had the most problems with.
All right.
And I'm a military guy.
That you are.
So the fact that that entire arc didn't need to happen. Holdo is a failure as a flag officer. She should never have been an admiral. It's like what. Think about it this way. It's like, say I'm going to your family members. You were one of the people that died on one of the 15 because 15 out of the 20 transports were blown up, and they say, well, how did Emmett die? And I'm like, he died so that Holdo could prove a point to Poe. It's like,
pretty much.
Like there's no reason for her not to have delivered this. And now, in isolation, I understand Poe's arc for this movie. This arc is essentially Luke's arc from Cloud City, or from Empire Strikes Back when he goes to Cloud City. He's frustrated. He feels he needs to do something. He's hot-headed. He goes and he tries to do everything himself, and he gets spanked with how wrong he is. Vader cuts off his hand, and he's got to get pulled out of the fire by Lando and Leia. And that's fine for what that is, because Luke is a farm boy. He has no idea of the Force, but he's starting to feel this power, and he's starting to feel that he has to do something, and also he feels that his loved ones are threatened, because, well, they are. But it doesn't work for Poe, because Poe is a military man. Not only is he a military man, he's a commander, which that's an 05 in the Navy, which he was then demoted to a captain, which is an 06, which makes no sense. You don't get demoted to a higher rank. But we'll
no kidding.
We'll just accept that they meant an Air Force captain, which is an 03, which is technically a lower rank.
Alrighty.
If I nitpick every single little thing, we'll be here forever.
This is true. I get you, though.
Yep. But he was a commander, which probably means he was an 05 squadron commander. So he understands the tactical, operational, and strategic levels of warfare. And he also knows that because he's a military man and he's worked his way up the ranks, you do not disobey orders. You can get killed for that. That is one of the things that you actually get the death penalty for in the military, is disobeying orders, especially from Leia, the supreme commander of the Resistance. So that made no sense. It's like, okay, he was hot-headed in, definitely cocky in The Force Awakens. I remember actually when I saw The Force Awakens with my friend, and it's when Poe returns to the scene. He just kind of blows up all of those fighters, and he goes, "It's hard not to dunk when everything around you looks like hoops." And it's like
yes, indeed.
That is the perfect Poe idea, is that he goes, okay, I'm going to go and show off my hot piloting skills. And he does. But this is, okay, now he's disobeying a direct order, and then mutinies. I even understand the mutiny, because it's like Holdo is not delivering the plan for no reason. No reason. Like I said, she's a failure as a flag officer. She should have never been a flag officer. And, I'll be the first to admit the world does not do the military well. Like Captain Piet in Empire Strikes Back gets promoted after Vader force chokes Admiral Ozzel and says, "Congratulations, you're now an admiral." And it's like, wait, so he's going to go from 06 to 010? How does that work? I mean,
that's quite a jump. That's true.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. I mean, maybe they promoted him to a rear admiral, which would be 07 or 08, depending on whether it's lower or upper half, or whether they have the Commodore rank. But that's a discussion for another time.
I get you.
But it's like, okay, you can't just use these character arcs in isolation. You have to understand who the character is before you give them a character arc. And
yes,
the idea of Poe's character arc makes no sense in the context of Poe being a military man. So that was the big problem that I had with that scene. That plus, like I said, the entire plot makes no sense. There's no reason for Holdo not to say what it is she's doing. And then they say that it's like, okay, it's like, now these have cloaking devices, but if they find out, then they're going to use their active thing where they can track them with cloaking devices. I'm like, then what's the point of the cloaking device? And what's the point of the scanning that doesn't have the cloaking device? If you have something that can detect cloaked ships, why are you not using it at literally every time? And maybe they could have said, oh, well, it drains a lot of power, or it uses a different thing, and it has a 4-hour cooldown. Okay, but you have to say that. You can't just say, "Oh,
you have to say it." Yep.
I have a cloaking device, but they have a cloaking tracker." Like, okay, then why are they not using the cloaking tracker? It was the same thing in Star Trek. They were actually pretty good about saying technobabble, but then they would explain what the technobabble is, or what unique gravitational anomaly made this thing only work in this specific instance. Okay, and yes, if you actually examine it from an astrophysics perspective, it falls apart. I think Neil deGrasse Tyson actually did a lot about saying, all of these movies have bad astrophysics. All of these movies have passable astrophysics. And, he does that because he's Neil deGrasse Tyson, very trendy astrophysicist.
Sure, of course.
But, I don't need it to be that in-depth. But you need to at least give me enough of a hand wave that it will carry me through the scene until I lose interest because I'm now looking at the next piece of action. That's all I'm asking for.
Exactly.
And I didn't get that.
You don't have to write a textbook, but you do have to do the basics. And I agree. Much as I like the actors involved. I always love Laura Dern. I always love Oscar Isaac. They're two of my favorites. Mm-hmm. They're always fun. But it's so unreasonable for Holdo to leave Poe in the dark that I was convinced for most of the movie that she was a First Order spy. Yeah. I was like, that's got to be what's going on here. She's got to be working for the enemy. There's no other way this makes any sense. And then, nope. It was so blatantly, like, I get that that's his arc. He's got to be hot-headed and learn to be better. I get that that's in isolation, like you said. That's what they're going for. But in context, it felt like such we can't tell the audience yet what's going on. That's all it felt like to me. We're keeping this information from you
for
no reason.
For the reveal. It was
exactly.
And it's like you don't have an in-story reason to do this, and it baffled me. And I mean, I understand what they're trying to do, because now I'm almost positive, especially with the death of the late great Carrie Fisher, Poe is going to be taking on a senior role in the Resistance for Episode 9. And I understand that.
I bet he'll be in charge. Yep.
And this will be what his this will be the staging point for his jumping on to the next level, into the strategic command level when he becomes a flag officer. But, it didn't make sense in the context of everything else. It only makes sense if you're just taking it to be just a normal a normal character. But he's not a normal character. He's Poe. He's a squadron commander. He has to know all of these things because that's how he became a squadron commander. Similarly, Holdo is supposed to know, hey, I'm a flag officer. I'm supposed to be a beacon of leadership. Why am I leading everyone into a mutiny against me because of my incompetence? And it's...
Exactly. Like, I like your comparison to Luke in the first movie. Like, the point is that Luke in the first movie and at the end of the second movie, when he makes the decision to go with Cloud City, Luke is kind of arrogant and kind of entitled. Like, you know, I need to go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. Like, that's the original Luke. He's like, I'm never gonna get out of here. Like, he's you know, he's a step ahead of where he actually is at all times, and he needs to learn that he's not quite there yet, and needs to train and get more into his powers. But with Poe, it's like you've already set him up as a hotshot pilot who is like the great hero of the Resistance, and like you can't. Like, if the movie is trying to tell me he's that much of a dangerous hothead, he wouldn't be in this position in the first place. Leia wouldn't be sending him on missions.
Yeah, he wouldn't be the hero.
If he was this dangerous that you're trying to tell me if he's so dangerous that you can't tell him what the plan is, he's not in this military at all. Then he would be gone. He would be kicked out.
He'd be drummed out. He'd be drummed out easily. And it's, you know, and I can understand the mutiny. Okay, the stress of it is making people crack. Okay, you know, with a little bit of polish, you can kind of work with this. But it's, again, why not reveal that? Why have why have him disobey a direct order to begin with? Why have the whole prank call thing in the beginning? You know, none of this is, you know, it's like, okay, now we're gonna have some BB-8. We're gonna have some BB-8 prop comedy humor. Okay, but not really. It's like, you know, it didn't serve the purposes of the film. And also, it's like the First Order, they say, all right, we're going to go blow up that base, but we're going to let the evac cruiser, we'll shoot that second. The base ain't going nowhere. Shoot the cruiser first.
You can always come back to get the base. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole other thing where they apparently, you know, the First Order can conquer the galaxy, but they can't call in a couple of strike corvettes to go and attack these smaller ships. You know, it's like, come on, how do you not have a cruiser or a corvette handy to go and handle smaller ships? You can't tell me that all you have are these big, nasty, scary things that apparently can't shoot small things, because, I mean, Poe basically solos at the Dreadnought and wins when he's defanging all of the weapon systems. Which I guess they never learned that, because I mean the Imperials from the original trilogy, they had that problem too. They're so small, they're evading our turbo lasers. Then why don't you have anything specifically for smaller craft? It's like,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly. There's
point defense systems are a thing. Why don't you have swarm missiles? Why don't you have flak guns? Why don't you? I mean, you don't have flak guns. You are taking all of your inspiration from World War II.
and yet
you don't have a fantasy or a science fantasy equivalent of a flak 18 hanging around. You know, specifically for these smaller craft.
That gets back into what we've been saying the whole time. It's like nothing has changed since Return of the Jedi.
Yep.
And that's bad storytelling, man. That's very deflating, because then I don't care where this series is going to end, because I know you're going to hit the reset button, because, you know, we're going to get a Star Wars movie every year until we die. That's just the world we live in now.
Yep.
That's just the media empire we live in. Disney has control. They're going to get as much money out of this as they possibly can.
My God, it's Madden.
But if you're going to do that, you can't hit if you just keep hitting the reset button like this to make things like it was in Return of the Jedi, then I'm going to stop caring very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And
there's no stakes.
Even I, as someone who loves seeing Star Wars movies, I'll stop showing up. If Episode 10 is just going to be they have a super weapon, and we only have a few ships to stop them, I'm not going. I can't. I don't want that story again.
How do you even get bigger? So it's like the Death Star could kill a planet, the Star Killer could kill a star. What are you killing now?
The whole galaxy. I don't know.
Yeah, it's because there's no point to that. I mean, heck, I mean, and they don't even need to do. I mean, like I said, I hate to go back to KOTOR again. Well, actually, no, I don't. I do like going back to KOTOR.
Of course.
Let's be honest. But they had great villains, which were all about negative aspects of the Force. Scion hated everyone so much that it was literally keeping his body together. Nihilus was hunger and consumed planets. That's already, I mean, that's a super weapon right there. That's completely different from the First Order / Empire. We destroy planets and stars cause reasons.
Cause reasons, yep.
And so, you know, like I said, I think the Poe First Order thing, like, it's all meant as a character arc. I mean, not a character arc, but it's all meant really as a character arc and a story for these individual characters, as opposed to divorced from the world they're in. And they make sense from a writing perspective. From you know, I'm going to hit every single wicket that I need to hit on the hero's journey. And then even in the Subversives playbook, I mean, we're both fans of George R.R. Martin, so we know that he loves the Subversives playbook. Where he says, okay, I'm going to go and break something down. I'm going to break this down. I'm going to break that down. I'm going to break this down. And you can still clearly identify the wickets. But the problem is that they have to exist in a coherent story altogether. You can't just make it, hey, I'm going to have these adventures of these characters. Well, you can if you're going to make like an ensemble type cast, but that's not the movie that this is. This is not a Flash Gordon. This is not a Firefly. Like, Firefly is great because it's just basically an ensemble cast in this universe doing stuff. But
exactly,
that's not Star Wars. That's Firefly.
No. Exactly. Like, yeah, what I like about Firefly is just, like, you know, the genre stuff is just kind of trappings, and you're really just there to watch these characters interact and do interesting things together.
Yes.
And you can do that in any format, in any story you want, but you can't. Yeah, none of the component parts in Last Jedi are bad in and of themselves. It's the interaction that's the problem. It's how these things work together, or rather do not work together. That's the problem.
Yes.
Like, I'm on board with having a world where you're investigating the roots of the Resistance and the Jedi with a more critical eye. I'm on board with that. I'm on board with you having an arc that shows your brash, cocky pilot as being overly hot-headed. I'm on board with that in and of itself. I'm on board with having Finn develop this new ideology and Rey dealing with Luke's inadequacies. I'm on board with all of these things in and of themselves, the story components. But I do not think they were wrapped together in a particularly coherent fashion. That's why I said it was less than the sum of its parts. I think the overall movie makes these things less interesting than they are on the page.
So then here's a question about a character. What do you think of Super Leia?
Again, I mean, it's great. You know, we haven't. You have in the first trilogy set up that, you know, no, there is another. Leia has the Force too, and we never get to see her use it. So,
except for when they're communicating together.
That's right. That's a good point. Right. End of Empire, they have that back and forth. That's true. I forgot that. But, like, we never get to see her use it in a big demonstrative way that we get to see Luke or her father use it in. Yeah. Or Obi-Wan. So in concept, I like the idea of getting to see Leia do a big Force thing. That's cool. Mm-hmm. The way it looked visually, it felt like one of the first couple Harry Potter movies when like they didn't, like, the CGI just wasn't there for what they were trying to do with their imagination. So it looked silly, and I say that with hesitation because, again, I like what they're going for. I love Carrie Fisher, and also just, like, you know, you look at the scenes, like, okay, they get attacked, and I love the moment when they get attacked, like Kylo Ren chooses not to do it, but then just immediately ships roar past him and do it anyway. I think that's a great setup, a little subversion there. But, like, so she gets knocked out into space, and then she flies back, and then she's just right where she was, and then she's just off screen for the rest of the movie until she needs. It just felt like there wasn't much stakes going on there. It felt like a way of avoiding having actual drama. And so again, concept fine, execution not so much. What did you think, sir?
I was actually really hoping for that to be the end of Leia, because I mean, let's say, okay, so we go back to that scene and she's still alive in space, and we can just, you know, I know that's not how bodies work when they get spaced, but, you know, bear with me. And then we see, you know, she sees the bodies of the Resistance High Command, and she sees Kylo's craft still attacking the ship, and then we just see it fade to black.
Sure.
And I mean, that would have been Rian Johnson just essentially Kali-Maing the entire audience. That's exactly what that would have been. And that would have been, you know, it would have been the end to Leia, and she would have died in space, strangled by her bra, as Carrie Fisher said.
Yep. This is true.
But it's like that was part of the whole thing. It's like the same thing with they say, okay, you have to pull back. We can no longer cover you at this range. It's like, you just took out their fighter bay. What are they gonna attack you with? And plus, you have those gigantic craft, at least 3 of them, and Snoke's ship is even bigger than that. Those smaller ones probably going to have at least 6 wings of craft. And we already saw the First Order doesn't care about casualties. And why would they?
No kidding.
These are the last of the Resistance. They'll spend whatever they need to go and mop this thing up. Just deploy literally every craft you have. I mean, what are they going to do? They've got 1 medical ship, 1 supply ship, and the main command ship. A medical ship's not going to have any weapons. The supply ship's not going to have any weapons because they're not combat craft. I mean, they'll have some minor self-defense, but it's like, that whole thing. And like I said, I really think that they should have ended the whole thing there, and then the final movie would have been just our 3 new characters and Chewie. But Chewie can be,
and Chewie, of course, give him some credit
because
yeah, I agree.
Chewie
and of course, the reason they didn't do that because they just wanted to keep that particular plot going.
Yeah.
But it was so blatant that again, like with not telling Poe what the plan was, it was such a blatant storytelling move that kind of removes the stakes for me. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
well,
and she's knocking on the door, and there's no airlock, there. And also, they killed Admiral Akbar off screen, or not off screen, but he was just a throwaway line. Just a throwaway line. It's like, come on, it's Admiral Akbar. He's literally the meme. He's the meme lord of Star Wars. You can't just get rid of Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, I agree. That was a kind of a cheap way to introduce stakes. It's like, come on, if you're gonna kill someone here, do it. Either do it with some grace. But you're spending more time on not killing Leia than you are on killing anybody else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm cool with having Leia using Force powers. I'm glad we got to see that.
No, that is definitely good because, I mean, I would have liked it more if she had actually used her Force powers in more of an inspirational type message.
Yeah.
Like really using, like, her ability, like, that whole clairvoyance Force thing, using it for strategic planning or something like that. I think that would have been, or the telepathy, using it to figure out a First Order staging area or something like that. Just noticeable ways where she's frustrated, and in that moment, she reaches out and touches the Force. And then you remember, hey, remember that Leia is Luke's sister, and she's part of this magic Force bloodline, and she has these powers, but she's using them in a Leia way. She's using them in a way that's different and fun. Why not?
Yeah.
It makes Leia herself. It makes Leia her own character, as opposed to now she has the Luke Force powers. It's okay, but let's make Leia Leia. Let's not make Leia with some Luke. Let's make Leia.
Agreed. Yeah, they used her powers purely as a way to keep her in the story, and not in a way that actually intersects with the rest of the story. Like, I would love to see, her. How do we integrate Leia's Force power with the military logistics of the Resistance? How does that get used? Because one of the things I do love, both in this movie and the original trilogy, is the kind of the disconnect between on the evil side between like the logistics of the Empire and the powers of the Sith. Like I love the sense in the original movie that a lot of the Imperial officers just don't really like Darth Vader and are creeped out and weirded out by him and just think he's strange, and your devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you find the rebel base. I like that stuff.
Even though 20 years ago, apparently in the prequels, Jedi were just walking around everywhere.
Right.
The one guy that said that was clearly middle-aged. So it's like, why are you saying this? 20 years. I mean, obviously the reason why is because the prequels weren't made at that point. But it's like, come on.
No, that's true. World building wise, it doesn't make any sense. But I do like that dynamic, and we get that recreated in this movie with Kylo Ren versus Hux. And Hux is just an officer, evil, a Nazi, but he's is an army officer trying to do his logistical job, and he's got to deal with this bratty space wizard who has a completely different mindset. And I love that, and I do like credit to both Adam Driver and the writers that. Clearly, Kylo Ren is them looking at like Anakin from the prequels and saying, okay, how can we do this better? How can we have the bratty, overly emotional teenage power guy? How can we do this in a way that's not just annoying, but actually makes sense as a character? And I think that, and I love that it makes total sense to me that this guy is Han Solo's son. Like I believe, like he has the same brashness, but just turned in the exact opposite direction.
With immaturity to go along with it. Now that I think about it, though, I actually do have an idea for Leia to use her Force powers in the Rebellion side, is to use that telepathy to communicate with uninterceptable communications. That's big. I mean,
that's smart.
Heck, that was one of the big plot points of Rogue One. Was intercepting communications. You have to get that shield down so that otherwise, that obviously makes no sense from a physics perspective. But we'll roll with it.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, so that would
have been great.
Yeah, and that like I said, it would have made Leia. It would have made not Leia plus like Luke force powers. It would have been Leia with Leia force powers, because we saw that she communicated via telepathy in Empire Strikes Back. Luke was the one that reached out first, which makes sense given that he had the training. But she was able to respond back, and you could say, okay, well maybe that's Luke's thing. But who's the only other person he communicates with? Darth Vader. In Return of the Jedi,
in the family,
father, son. So it's clearly you need at least a little bit of force powers. At least as far as the movie's concerned. I know the extended universe does its own thing, but at least as far as the movie's concerned, you need a little bit of force in order to be able to respond back. At least if I'm remembering right.
I think you're right about that, but that would have been great to see for sure.
All right, so I guess that's everything. Do you have anything else you want to speak about, or should we just go to the final verdict?
Yeah, let's just go to final verdict. What are your closing summary thoughts on The Last Jedi, good sir?
I thought it was a visually impressive, but it was a flawed piece, and the flaws kept me from being engaged. So, and I think it almost hurts even more to know that we have these ideas that we've been kicking about on as to how we could have improved it, and we saw that those were clearly within the realm of possibility. It's not like it's just, a bad movie is just a bad movie.
Sure.
And this isn't a bad movie, but I'm just saying, if there's a bad movie and it's just irredeemable and there's nothing you do, the Star Wars Holiday Special Ewok scene, it's like, okay, there's nothing you can do to fix that movie. Okay, there's nothing, we can move on. But when you see The Last Jedi and you see so many things that they could have explored a lot more, the failures of the Jedi and all of these other discussions that we've been having, I think that makes it hurt a little bit more. Is that like you said, one more pass to the writer's circle, one more pass to the editing room, and it could have been a much better film. And it hurts that wasn't there.
Agreed. Yeah, there's a great film in here. Yes. There's a great movie in Last Jedi. It's just kind of buried in a lot of subplots and weird pacing. And some stuff goes on too long, and some stuff isn't explored at nearly at length as it needs to be.
Oh yeah.
So it's a very sloppy movie, and that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with making a passionate, sloppy, flawed movie.
The Room.
But like you say, it does. There is exactly. But there is a frustration, like you say, that Force Awakens didn't blow my mind in any respect. It was a very unambitious movie. It had its one job to do, and it did that job. I thought that was. This for me has higher highs and lower lows than The Force Awakens. I think it's a much more interesting movie. Okay. It's a much more unique movie.
Okay. Definitely a riskier movie.
Also, but it is also a much messier. And flawed movie, and I'm looking forward to revisiting it, but I get the feeling that this is the kind of movie where I'll watch parts of it years down the line and not the whole thing. Like there's going to be distinct scenes, like the throne room scene, the hyperspace jump attack scene, a couple other scenes that I look forward to rewatching. But the movie as a whole, I feel like. It feels like a couple different movies. It feels like Laura Dern was piloting one movie and smashed it into the other. That's what it feels like to me. It's just a couple different movies that don't quite gel properly. So it's a fascinating work, and I'm very glad I saw it. I'm glad it exists. And it's a fun movie to talk about. Talk about it with you and with other people. It's a great discussion piece. I will definitely give it that. It's been fascinating to watch the arguments over it. I love how divisive it is. I think that's great. Mm-hmm. Like The Force Awakens it didn't really create conversations, so that's great. Yeah. But in terms of just stepping back and overall grading it as a movie, in terms of whether I would watch it again and my experience watching it, there were significant flaws, and there were significant flaws built into the stuff I loved about it. It was hard to appreciate the stuff I loved about it because it felt like it wasn't given the proper foundation. So that's my overall take.
Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously, Star Wars. Where would you rank it? Where would you rank it in terms of the other films?
I would not. I definitely think it's a notch below the originals.
Okay.
Even Jedi in that regard. I would put it above any of the prequels.
Okay. What about with Force Awakens?
I mean, I like Revenge of the Sith. Okay, but the flaws in this movie don't come close to the flaws in the prequels. So
no.
It's definitely a step above there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Force Awakens. It's interesting. It's almost like a film negative of The Force Awakens in so many regards. It has the opposite strengths and the opposite flaws. Force Awakens is a much tighter movie and a much better paced movie, but is also a much less interesting and distinct movie.
Okay.
So, I don't know. It's tough for me to compare it to Force Awakens. I might say I overall prefer this because of just I give more of a pass to flawed, ambitious things than I do to like tighter but unambitious things. Like there's more to admire. But I would put this below Rogue One. I think Rogue One is probably the best of the new one.
Okay, so you're saying
what do you think?
The risks that Last Jedi took elevated over The Force Awakens, even for the stumbles that it took when it took those risks, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, I would say like it's not. If it had taken those risks and completely crashed and burned, it would be below The Force Awakens for me.
Yeah.
But it got 75% of the way there. Mm-hmm. So I give it props for that. So I would probably say it's a better movie than The Force Awakens, although I would probably watch The Force Awakens again first, simply because it's an easier sit through.
Yeah, I think
if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the nitpicker in me keeps getting frustrated whenever I even think about some of the scenes in the movie, which I think does interfere with my enjoyment. But I understand, that's my personality. I'm a guy who wrote several thousand words on what different cuisines there are in the different regions of Westeros. So
an excellent post, if I may say so.
Well, thanks. It's actually my most popular world building one, I think. So obviously I can get down the rabbit hole, and I will go.
Sure.
I will go all the way to Wonderland when it comes to things like that. And so, but I will say that the fact of the matter is, I think I'm with you. I'm more willing to give someone the benefit for trying something, even when they fail, rather than just rehashing, A New Hope with new proper nouns.
Exactly. Because we can't keep doing that.
No,
we can't keep doing the original series over and over again. So even a flawed attempt to make it about something different gives me more. I hope the rest of these Star Wars movies we're going to get every year until we die, I hope they are more in the vein of Last Jedi than Force Awakens. I hope they are tighter than Last Jedi. I hope they look at this and see some story decisions they can make better. But I think this is a better model than Force Awakens is in terms of just push the boundaries. Try some new things. They're not all going to work, and you learn from what didn't work in this one. But more like this, I would say.
And I think, I mean, when it comes to Rogue One or something like that, I do think, I mean, the third act of Rogue One was exceptional. I mean, I complained about the tactics to everyone that listened, because I do that. But the pacing of Jin and all that stuff, that didn't really work for me for the first two acts. But
I agree.
The basically the Dirty Dozen commando raid into that planet, that was good, and I liked that.
That was great.
Yeah, and I thought
that was the best Star Wars has been since the original trilogy, I would say, with the third act of Rogue One,
Yeah, the third act of Rogue One. So, I would say that Rogue One, on the strength of its third act, keeps it as the best of this new era of Star Wars. And then, I mean, I know that apparently the talk is that Solo is not going to be that great, which is kind of a shame, because I would really like to see Han Solo and Lando Calrissian buddying around. And I do believe, what's his name, Glover, is going to be Lando.
Donald Glover, yeah.
Which is going to be
intriguing.
That sounds like it could be a lot of fun.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I mean, Lando was awesome, so I
don't know. Lando's one of the best Star Wars characters, so more of him is always welcome for sure.
Yeah, so we'll just have to wait and see what we get with Solo and Episode 9.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they do with Episode 9, especially with JJ back in the director's chair, which has me a little concerned.
Yeah.
Much as Abrams is he's a very talented director. He's very good at casting.
Yes.
He's very good at making you feel delightful in the moment. But all of his movies, not just the Star Wars stuff, but all of his stuff, if you think about it for more than a second, it starts to break down. Yeah. Like his Star Trek movies are very visually exciting and they're very fun and humorous, but like the stories in those movies are just gobbledygook. Even for someone who doesn't enjoy nitpicking, like it doesn't. Those movies don't work at all on a script level. So that has me a little concerned about Episode 9. But we'll see where it goes. I just hope that. I hope that they don't. I just hope that they don't keep hitting the reset button. Yeah. In terms of, because like even though again this movie was trying new things, but it was hitting the reset button in terms of the scenario, in terms of the overall what's happening and why.
I really think
it was doing new things in like a character theme way, but the overall situation was exactly the same. Yeah. So they can't just keep doing that. I hope they learn better.
And I'm really hoping the polarizing reactions to Last Jedi don't freak out the directors and cause them to go back to the safe spot, because then we're just going to get more of The Force Awakens, and that's like you said, that's not going to bring me into the theater. It's not.
That works once. That works one time after the prequels when you need to remind people what they like about Star Wars. You can get away with that. You can do your fanfic once, but not again. If you keep doing that, there's no point.
Yeah, there's no point. We can stay at home and watch the original trilogy then.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Well, this was a lot of fun. I think we did about two-hour discussion. We had a little hiccup there with the Skype call, but that's okay. So
close it off,
yeah. Why don't you close it off? Tell people where they can find you, and
Sure. So once again, my name is Emmett Booth. I go by PoorQuentyn on Tumblr and Twitter. So you can find me at PoorQuentyn.tumblr.com. That's PoorQuentyn.tumblr.com, and just at PoorQuentyn on Twitter. And then my writings pop up from time to time on, like I said, Deadspin, Vulture, Vice, a couple other places. And I appear on podcasts every now and then. So and you can always just search my name and see what comes up. But those are the two main places to find me.
And you want to search you under PoorQuentyn, because that's usually the handle you go by for your writing.
I go by PoorQuentyn pretty much everywhere. Yep.
All right. And my name is Jim McGeehan, and I'm something like a lawyer on WarsofASOIAF. That's WarsofASOIAF.tumblr.com. And you can also find me at warsandpoliticsofIceandfire.wordpress.com. And you can also see me on guest spots on various different podcasts. I also have my own podcast. It's a military history podcast called To Wage War. This month's episode will be the Battle of Ain Jalut. So if you want to look at Mamluks beating Mongols, that should come out sometime in January.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me on, brother. It's a great idea. I'm glad we got to have this discussion.
Yeah, that's all right. And for everyone listening, may the Force be with you.
Damn straight. Mm-hmm.